garden Q&A that we do each and every Sunday morning. All right, here on whatever platform you're watching this morning, we will be on Frankie Flowers' Facebook page, as well as Scott's Miracle Grows Facebook page. You can see us on my YouTube channel, as well as LinkedIn and Twitter. For those that don't know who I am, who is this guy? Like, who is this guy that's talking to me right now? Well, this guy is Frank Ferragini, aka Frankie Flowers of City TV's Breakfast Television. You can watch me Monday through Fridays on BT on every morning, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m., where we talk a little bit about everything. And I'm there because I'm wild about weather and passionate about plants. Yeah, each and every day I give you a forecast. The reason why I'm wild about weather is I've been actually involved in agriculture, farming all my life, but as well as I've been doing the weather on TV in some form and or matter since the late 90s. So been doing it a while. They call me legacy talent now. When it comes to my greenhouse and also my gardening experience, my family have two garden centers called Bradford Greenhouse Garden Gallery, one in Bradford, one in Barrie. They're greenhouse growers as well, and they grow flowers for many places that you buy plants, including places like your Canadian Tire, your Sobeys, independent garden centers as well. And Longos is one of them, Loblaws. So there's lots that are out there. Lazaire's, President's Choice, they do all that. So we've got a lot of good mornings. Good morning from Tanya. Good morning to you, T. I was already speaking to her. Good morning to Paul, my good friend Paul, the tattooed gardener. If you want to find out more information on gardening, always check out with Paul. He has lots going on, and he's just opened up a new live plant collectible plant of tropicals with one of his colleagues. Check that out if you're looking for something unique, interesting, something that nobody else has. Paul is your go-to guy. Good morning from Ancaster, says Jane. Karen saying good morning this morning. We're just going to say a little bit of show them too. There's Maria saying good morning this morning. We have lots of people out there saying good morning. There's Linda saying good morning as well. We even have Marilyn saying good morning as well. So let's talk about what's going on in the world. What's going on in the world? A couple things that I did just last week. Last week, I did a great event on Thursday night where we had over 200 people online talking about growing your own food with the Barrie Public Library, speaking about food security. Coming up, that produce prices are going to be higher this year. There's going to be a lot more people jumping into wanting or growing more of their own food. So I'm always going to have that information for you as well. I'm very passionate about getting people out there and trying to grow something that they can eat, just for the process and also just to value how much work it goes into growing your own food. Some things can be very easy and a lot of surprises with minimal care. You can actually grow some great food, but people out there have to really respect our produce. That's super important for me. Seed starting, a lot of people getting busy right now thinking about starting their own seeds. Just remember, you need space, you need time, you need heat, you'll need light as well. And then, do you need that many plants? Before you seed start, those are some of the questions that I want you to ask. We can talk a little bit more about that as well. Greenhouse industry right now, super busy. They're out there sticking cuttings, which means by sticking a cutting is you're taking a sliver of a plant, sticking it and rooting it in soil for production. Things like geraniums are happening right now in big numbers. And with a lot of disruptions in terms of flights and things like that, there are some shortages that are happening out there, but they're also sowing lots of seeds, getting prepared for the upcoming gardening season. All those greenhouses you drive by, if you see some steam coming out of the top of the roof, that's because they're growing something good in there for you. A little bit about Floriade, which is the Emerald Cruise Line, which we'll be taking in July. That's going to be going from Switzerland all the way to Amsterdam, ending off at Floriade, which is a garden show that only happens once every 10 years. You still have a chance to hop on that. There's just a few seats that are left. I had an update this week and it is a go. Thumbs up. It's going. So with that, for all those that have already booked, I look forward to seeing you. We're going to have garden trivia nights. We're going to have lots of fun. And we're going to see some beautiful things, beautiful architecture, some great food, and wonderful flowers. Floriade's all about the new green city. What would that city look like? They've actually built a seniors home as well as a university that's going to be permanent there. What are those things going to look like? Sorry to have missed Thursday. Can't wait. This Tanya's just saying as well. She's going, can't wait, bucket list trip. So Tanya's going to be joining us. Tanya, of course, has a great garden mind, so we'll be able to tap into all the garden minds. There's Carol saying sorry. And here as well, we have a question, I think, from Stratford. We have so many rabbits that eat plants. What to do with vegetables to protect, or with vegetation to protect? So when it comes to anything that's going to be eating plants, we got to figure out, number one, Why are they there? And generally they're there because they need a food source. So often what we can do is to look at the food sources that we have on their property, and we either change that plant material to plants they don't like if we have a bad problem, or what we do is we try to figure out what we can do to scare them. So what they don't like to see, what they don't like to smell, what they don't like to touch, what they don't like to taste, what they don't like to hear. So when it comes to rabbits, often you'll see a plastic owl that's placed up because owls are predators. Sometimes people will put coyote urine. I don't know who collects the coyote urine, but you can purchase that at many sporting goods supply stores. So you'll put that for smell. You know, the owl you have to move around because bunnies over time will figure out that's just a lazy owl. Sometimes we'll raise beds. Another thing we can do to make them taste bad is animal be gone. Animal be gone is something we can spray on ornamental plants, those plants that we're not going to eat. It leaves what's called Betrix on them. And with that flavor profile, the rabbits just won't like eating them. So those are some of the things that you have to do. For instance, on my property here, I have everything that I grow in terms of leafy greens elevated, so the rabbits just can't get. Rabbits, even if you were to fence a property, if you had a lot of rabbit problems, that fence actually has to bury into the ground at least 8 inches because rabbits can burrow underneath and get through. I have a rabbit that's in my backyard that jumped up and ate the remaining kale because the snow is a little higher. And now you're seeing more rabbit damage higher up on fruit trees, some deciduous and things like that. And often to protect fruit trees, what you'll do in late fall is you'll put like a plastic wrap around the trunk of that tree. And that'll prevent those rabbits from eating, but it goes up over time. Here we go as well. Good morning. I was hoping to attend the Barrie Library on Thursday. Unfortunately, it wouldn't let me connect. Sorry to have missed it. To let you know, I'm going to put a link underneath this after where you can link to the Barrie Public Library. They did record that 1-hour event that we did, and you can watch it. So there you go. Matthew is saying good morning to me. Hey, Matthew, good morning. Karen. Hey, Frankie, I believe I have a very large raccoon and or more living under my deck. What can I do? So with raccoons and trying to rid those, that's something that you're going to have to trap. Raccoons, in the short period of time, will start to be thinking about having babies. And when they have babies, they're always going to go to a place where they're going to be protected and warm. And that's why generally in late winter, early spring into spring, you get a lot of raccoons up in people's attics, because they find a little area where they can actually go into, and then that's where they're going to burrow in. So it's always good to make sure you inspect your property. Any of those cracks and or crevices, you either do some caulking, because they can actually start to pry away pretty easy, and even squirrels can get in. And in some areas, you'll put steel wool, or you put a cage up or something, or netting, and or like a chicken wire fence to prevent them. So with these raccoons underneath your deck, first step is to get them out of there. Sometimes it's trapping, calling a local professional to do that. The next step after that is to then put chicken wire so they won't go back underneath there again. Why would you want them not under there? Well, they're going to defecate. They're going to go to the bathroom, and that's harmful over time too. So it's just something that you don't want. Hopefully I answered your question there. I love this. This is a little part of our community. If you're joining us for the first time, the whole idea of this Q&A is for people not only to pose questions, but also for gardeners that love gardening to type down and share their experiences. So replying to Sandra, didn't mind with mine, I had pigeons trying to make it out of it. So I don't know what the question was, but there's people out there that are still answering questions. There's a lot of people out here that have a lot of good information. Here's another question. Good morning, Frankie. When do you start planting roses? So roses, first off, so Valentine's Day is just next Monday. Reminder, make sure that you're good to your loved ones. I'm going to buy something for myself. Just going to have a little coffee here. But roses, potted roses, so many different varieties, right? There's grandiflora, floribunda, there's Hybertea, there's your Rosa rugosas, David Austin roses, Canadian Explorer series roses, there's Griffin Buck roses, there's Knockout series of roses. There's so many different varieties that are out there. As soon as we start to get frost out of the ground, if you go to your garden center and you see roses available for sale and they're not in bloom and they're actually fairly dormant, you could go ahead and plant those. However, if they were in a greenhouse and they've been forced to look beautiful because people buy with their eyes, and we were to plant that fully flushed out rose, in mid-April, and then we were to get some frost, that would really harm and or hurt the rows. If you want to be totally safe, wait till the beginning of May. But as soon as ground frost is out, as long as the plant material is dormant and tracking the same as the weather pattern that we have, then you can go ahead and plant. Here's another question that we have here. Rabbits are not the problem here. It's squirrels that eat our veggies and dig out and eat our flowers. So with squirrels, there's something that we've tested many times. And with that, I've tested what's called the pelletized chicken manure. So the pelletized chicken manure is there's many different varieties that you can get. One of them was AccuSoil, and I don't work with them, just to let you know. But I've actually top dressed soil around areas where I've seen squirrels eating plants. And squirrels, for some reason, just don't like it. So they'll stay away. So that's one thing that we can do. Applying down blood meal is something else that squirrels tend not to like the smell. But you always have to reapply these after it rains. So that's really important for you. Sometimes as well, if they're continuing to eat, then if you can't beat them, you feed them. So you can put a squirrel feeder on the far end of the property. That'll keep them busy and keep them away from your plants. But think about chicken manure, pelletized chicken manure. Try that out and let me know how you make out. Here's another question I think that we have. Morning, Frankie. Kids really want watermelon in the garden. I started seeds indoors. I've tried for 3 years now, and they grow, but no bigger than a baseball. Any tips or tricks so we can maybe have one to eat this year? That's from Ashley Brown. So first off, when you're starting watermelons indoors, you're not going to be starting those to very light. And the reason being is watermelons is from the squash family, cucumber, zucchini, pumpkins, all from the same family, quick to germinate. So we're really not going to be starting those indoors by seed to really the beginning of May, even the end of April, if you want to be that last week of April, first week of May. And then as soon as frost warnings are done, we can plant outdoors, but I would rather you plant almost the first week of June when soil temperatures are warmer. You're going to find that they're actually going to grow nice and quick. Watermelons, if you're thinking at home of growing those, then what you're trying to do is to make sure you have enough available space, because watermelon plants grow huge. You can actually tie them up and support them and grow them vertically, depending upon the size of the watermelon. You're almost better to grow some smaller size watermelons. And when you're going to buy your watermelon seeds, try to buy the ones that have the shortest days to maturity. So you actually see the days to maturity will be on the tag. And we want to get something around or under or around 100 days. And then you're going to be doing very well. To size up the watermelon, a lot of the times that's water, making sure that you're watering appropriately. With watermelon and any type of squash plant, we want to keep water off the foliage. So we want to keep that water pretty much on the root zone. And there's some tips for you. So I hope that helped out. So got another question here, I think. Do you have any tips on growing vegetables in between plants in the garden? Absolutely. If you have a perennial garden, perennials are fairly late to come up and leaf out and fill out that perennial garden. So in some of those spaces, we could actually sow in some spinach. Boom, spinach comes up. We'll harvest it before that perennial takes space. We could sow in, which means plant seed in the ground, direct sow. And we're going to do that in mid-April or early to mid-spring, not early spring, not very early spring. More so when we're in spring, we're starting to see leaves grow on the trees. That's when we can direct sow. So we could do spinach, we could do radish, we can even try some leaf lettuce in that open spaces. But potager, if you're interested in growing a mix of flowers and vegetables together in the same garden space, that's potager, which is really soup for French. And that's the form of gardening where you're doing that. And there's like radicchio, which is a really sexy looking foliage plant. Kale, many of the kales actually look really good, intermingled and planted in with flowers. So we can easily do that, but it's all about a space game and a sunlight game. So for vegetables to grow well, we need lots of sun and we will need some available space. But before perennials actually fill in, early crops or cool crops that are quick to grow and quick to harvest are ones that we could sow in, harvest them before that space is taken up. Here we go with another question this morning as well. Good morning, guys. This is from Lori. How do I get rid of tiny white dot bugs on my jade plant and on other succulent plants? So those tiny white dots, if they are, it could be mealybug that you're talking about. It'd be great, Lori, to see a picture. So it's Frankie at frankieflowers.com. Sometimes if it's mealybug, we can just use some alcohol wipes, like a weak dilution of alcohol, and we can wipe up those white dots. Insecticidal soap is something that we can use, like a Bug Be Gone is something that we can use, but I really need to identify what that white dot is. And then from that, we can actually give you a control mechanism. Sometimes you'll see white dots on the foliage of some of your plants and succulent plants, and that's actually some of the salts in your water. So it actually has nothing to do with an insect. So I really want to determine what that is first. So we got a question here. Oh, this is a reply. Got my BTK already. Probably talking about gypsy moss. So gypsy moss, of course, BTK last year sold out because of gypsy moss. BTK is Bacillus thuringiensis, and that BTK is a bacteria that's not harmful to you, but is harmful to many types of caterpillar type things like a gypsy moth. I have tulip bulbs in clay pots, but they are not watered and in a cold room. When do I start to water them and bring them out, Mississauga area? This is Ashman. So you don't have to water them. They're basically going through their plunge period. So when you take and you're trying to force bulbs and you're wanting to do what we're doing in this example, is we're putting them in a cool, dark space to put them in their plunge period to make them think that they're dormant. So what you'll do is if you want to start bringing just a few pots out now, because you really want to enjoy them, right? So now that we're getting into February, the February blahs, there's nothing better than some tulips in your home. So you can pull them out, water them, introduce them to light. The warmer, the brighter the room, the quicker they're going to go through their cycle. If you want to slow that cycle down, let's say that you water them and they start to grow and you're like, oh, I don't want that. I don't want that for another 3 or 4 days. You can actually put it back into that cool area and just leave it, and it'll actually sit for 3 to 4 days and then bring it back out into light. I really encourage people for this upcoming weekend, if you're thinking about buying flowers, everybody always buys roses for Valentine's Day, but tulips are fantastic. They don't last as long as a rose, a lot less expensive, and generally most tulips that you see at your floral shops right now and grocery stores are locally grown. So you're supporting generally a local farmer. Quick story about me. For several years, for my family business, before I was in TV, I would actually be at the Ontario Flower Growers Association, which is the clock, the auction, and I'd be the one going out to buy cut flowers. And I'd be there bidding away and looking at many different cut flowers and purchasing away and trying to get good deals so that we could pass it on to some of our customers. It was lots of fun. So there's some questions for you. Here's another question about a Croton. My Croton has white film at the base. Don't know what is causing that. That white film at the base is all due to your water. So your water that you have in your home. And sometimes one of the best things you can do to kind of even purify some of your water or get rid of some of the different amendments that have been put into water or different additives that have been put into municipal water is you can actually fill up your watering can and just let it sit for a few days. So every time you finish watering your plants, always fill your watering can and just have it sitting there filled. It's going to evaporate a little bit. So it's going to put a little bit of humidity into your home, very minimal. That evaporation will actually kind of cleanse it a bit, but it'll also put that water at room temperature, which is really good. So that white film on the base, I'm guessing it's due to your water, but once again, you can take a picture and it's Frankie at frankieflowers.com. Frankie at frankieflowers.com. Here's another question that we have today. Hi, Frank. I have a bay leaf indoors. What can I do to make it strong and green? So, Rosa, the key with the bay leaf indoors is, as long as you're in a bright room, that's key. They do tend to like a cooler night and a warmer day. So, if any way that you can turn the temperature down in your home, sometimes with our Nest systems, if you have a Nest thermostat, we can actually program it so our homes are a little bit cooler at night. It's really great for plants, gives a rest period. Now that daylight is starting to get a little bit longer, near the end of this month is when you can start fertilizing. You can use a water-soluble fertilizer like a Miracle Grow. Fantastic that you can use that. Generally, some of the bay leaves as well, a little misting because with the lack of humidity in our home, that will be really beneficial. And always keep an eye out there for any insects. But because we have shorter days right now, your plant may look like it's resting and or a little bit weaker, tired. That's just that it's just a little bit shorter days. As the days get longer, you're going to start to see new growth. That cooler night, that warmer day does huge difference for plants that are out there. Here's another question. When can I plant spring bulbs in containers so that they will bloom outdoors in the spring? Good question. So things like tulips, daffodils, crocus, fritillaria, of course, hyacinths, those are all spring blooming flowering bulbs. Spring blooming flowering bulbs need to be planted outdoors in the fall because they need to go, as we said, through that plunge period, that rest period of dark cool that then triggers them to go into their cycle to bloom again. So if we're wanting something for spring color, you should have been planting those bulbs in the fall. You can purchase, so for instance, if somebody wants to put some of those in their containers, if we actually purchase, and this is later on in mid-April, if we're thinking for maybe our early spring containers, we can purchase bulbs at garden centers, grocery stores. And if you just see them just starting to come out and emerging, so you want to get them when they're fairly young is what they would be saying, we can plant those in pots in our containers outdoors. And what'll happen is they'll actually harden off to the temperature, and then they'll actually grow based upon the weather. If they're in bloom, if they're actually fully up in bloom, and then we get a temperature of -5 at night, it's going to freeze the blooms, freeze the foliage because it's all soft growth. So we want it to be cold growth that we have. And that's one way that we can do it. But if you want to have spring flowering blooms in your garden, that was a fall plant that should happen in September, October, even into November. Here's another question that we have. Any tips for azaleas? I bought 2 beauties, flowered, but leaves are falling and no flowers now. So azaleas are an acid-loving plant. So generally you need to get a rhododendron or an azalea food, a high acidic food. You can take a look. Scott's Miracle-Gro has some of those as well, as there's others that are available. In order for that azalea to rebloom, it needs to go through a dormancy period. So you're going to have it growing inside your home. You could then even put them into partial sun outdoors in their containers and just enjoy their foliage. And then in fall, once the frost starts to come and we start to get colder temperatures, I would bring it indoors at that time. And then you could even put it into a cooler space, even a cold room for about a week or so, just to put it into a little bit of a week to 2 weeks, a little bit of a plunge period, then bring it back out, put some water, put some fertilizer, and then we can hopefully get it to reset and to bloom again. But in order for an azalea to bloom, it has to go through a dormancy period. Can you plant that azalea in your garden outdoors? It all depends on the variety of azalea used. Most potted azaleas are not winter hardy for many areas in Southern Ontario and or Canada overall. Here we go. Another question that we have here. Oh, that's just a morning, Frankie. Good morning to you, Crystal. And thanks for the love heart too. It's always good to share a little love. This is from May. Should seeds gathered from last summer's veggies go through a plunge period? Great question. No. Most seeds that are collected from your vegetable gardens don't. And a lot of the times, the best way when you harvest them is just to put them into a paper envelope. And then you're putting them in a cool, dry space that's dark. So no moisture, no light, no darkness. And by being in that envelope versus being in a Ziploc container, that Ziploc container doesn't breathe. That paper envelope breathes, so allows the seed to dry out. Some seeds will benefit from what's called soaking. So in the world of seed starting, there's the 3 S's of seed starting, and it all depends on the hardness of the shell of that seed and the seed itself. Some perennial seeds need to go through a plunge period. So stratification, that is the plunge period where you're actually freezing some of the seeds. Many perennials have to do that. There's soaking is the other seed. The other S, forgive me. Beans and peas benefit from soaking the seed for several hours before putting it in the soil. That'll weaken that shell. And then for other hard-shelled seeds, there's scarification, and that's basically taking a nail file and filing down the seed to allow it to germinate. So those are the 3 S's. But most of those vegetables selected don't need to go through a plunge period, but a great question as well. Here's another one. Frankie, what can I do? What can I do? My apple and pear trees, the fruit is full of black stuff. When should I cut the trees, or is there any remedy? I did spray, did not work. So there's black knot that you can get on fruit trees, which will be on the bark of the fruit trees. That is something that over time will take and kill the fruit tree. One of the best things you can do to rid or reduce the amount of disease and or insects from last season is in early spring when our temperatures are about 5 degrees, above 5 degrees, forgive me, for at least 12 hours, we can use a dormant spray kit. A dormant spray kit is a horticultural oil and lime sulfur. We apply that while the fruit tree is in dormancy. That'll actually clean up any disease and or insects, and then pretty much helps it almost start it fresh that season. Then we want to monitor. For fruit trees, if we're getting black formations on the fruit itself, that's a disease that we need to treat with a fungicide. And that's when we're going to need to treat while it's in season. Remember that insecticides, and there are natural insecticides that you can use, or organic insecticides that you can use. Those are for the treatment of insects. Fungicides are for the treatment of disease. Lime sulfur is an example of a fungicide. Okay. Here's another question that we have here as well. Good morning, Frankie. This is from Brenda. Hey, good morning, Brenda. I have a question about powdery mildew on my pennies. Every year for the past 3 years, I cut them back every year and they come back beautiful. As soon as I get 2 to 3 flowers, the mildew comes. What can I do to get rid of mildew? So mildew, powdery mildew, is generally a disease, and let's go to the reasons why you get that disease. Some plants are just susceptible to it. So they're just plants that, given heat, humidity, and moisture sitting on them for too long, or if that spores that is sitting dormant in that area, you're just going to get it. The way that we can minimize the amount of powdery mildew in a garden or even in a property or indoors is by creating good air circulation and airflow, by thinning out that space, meaning that we do have some areas or pockets where air can flow around, or open up the canopy to make sure that we're getting more light to dry it out a little faster so it doesn't sit too wet for too long. Overhead watering is another way that you could actually increase powdery mildew. So we want to make sure when we're watering, we're trying to water the roots. Those are some ways that we can remedy. Pennies, I don't really necessarily know what you're referring to when you refer to as pennies. It's probably a nickname for a plant. So do I know if that plant's susceptible? I don't, because I don't know what plant you're referring to, but those are a couple things to actually help you out. I hope I did help you out there. Here we go. Heather has a question. Want to buy a garden shed to keep everything in one spot, but confused at which one to buy. So many different materials and pieces. Can anyone suggest a shed, please? And thank you. So for garden sheds, generally municipalities will not allow you anything over 10 by 10. So generally you don't need a permit for anything 10 by 10 and or under. There are many different ones that are out there. Wood are ones that you're going to have to continue to treat and to paint and to things like that. I bought this property with a garden shed, that one that is a recycled plastic, and I've been pretty pleased with it so far. But often what's good is the base. You either want to pour a concrete pad for the base of that shed and or put some patio stones that are down. Really, the base is super important than building on top. And a lot of the times it's usually the look that you want, and then also question the maintenance. So with this recycled plastic, I don't have to paint it. I don't have to do anything with it. It's fairly durable. How long will it last? Yet to be determined. But overall, I'm pretty pleased with this guy. But I inherited that one too. Good morning from Wasaga Beach. Good morning to you. Good morning from Brampton. Good morning to you, Laura. Here you go. This is a good one. Actually, this is good. Elaine saying, replying to Frankie, probably peonies, not pennies. And you're completely right. Many different peonies later on, actually after they're done their bloom period, will get powdery mildew. Generally, that's just how peonies are. It's really hard to control, but the key is for your peonies in the fall, when they're all starting to die back, when you cut them back and clean up any of that foliage that's around, so and discard that foliage. Like, just get rid of it, put it to the curb. Wipe your shears with bleach after, or any cutting tool that you're using after with bleach. Wash your garden gloves, so any of those spores, and then open up some good air circulation around that area. Good thing. I wasn't thinking pennies, kind of threw me off. Yes, indeed. It would be peonies for sure. If your peony doesn't bloom, here's a true fact, guys. 9 times out of 10, if a peony's not blooming, it's 2 reasons. Not enough sun. The second reason, it's planted too deep. If you plant a peony too deep, it'll just put foliage out and not bloom. You should always plant a little bit above ground level. Good morning from Montreal. Carolyn, I'm supposed to be in Montreal in a few weeks' time. Just trying to plan that right now. Just going for a visit. I'm going to check out Lufa Farms. I've been invited by them to check out their rooftop greenhouse where they're growing food. I'm pretty excited about that as well. Here we go with another. Thank you, Frankie, from Heather. I will look at the recycled plastic ones. I like the concept. You're welcome, Heather. And I think we're just going to close out on that because we're at 29 minutes right now. Did I get everything down? Yeah, so we're working on the website. So that's going to be coming up still. Still working on the online course. I'll be giving you guys some information on that. You can check in Shot City Line on Friday. So that upcoming City Line episode on the benefit of indoor plants will be coming up. Tomorrow, I'm off to shoot some different pictures for the website. So I'm excited to do that with Amanda. So it's a busy week. And today we have hockey. Hockey's back. I got one son that has hockey in Sutton, the other son that has hockey in Thornton. So it's a busy Sunday, guys. I hope you guys are great. Stay healthy, everybody out there. We'll give a couple other good morning shout outs as well to Natalia. Good morning to you. Jane, who says thank you. Thank you as well. Lucas is saying, Lufa Farms are amazing. Enjoy. It's Lufa Farms. And there you go, guys. I hope everybody has a great Sunday overall, a fantastic February, and a reminder, next Monday is Valentine's Day. Don't wait for that day to tell someone you love them. Each and every day, reach out to someone who you love and just say, hey, I love you. Love you guys all too. Have a great day. And remember, gardening is always better than therapy because at the end, you get tomatoes.